I need you to sit with this sentence for a second. A country is now claiming it fired cruise missiles at the physical infrastructure behind the cloud. And unlike an ordinary battlefield claim, this one follows confirmed physical damage to major cloud facilities earlier in the war, not hacking them, not sanctioning them, physically attacking them with drones and cruise missiles. And here's the strange part. AI stocks have been selling off for weeks, but on spending fears, earnings math, capex worries, almost none of that repricing is about what we're covering today. The market's worried someone might cut a budget. Nobody is pricing someone shooting at the buildings. So today, let's separate what's actually been verified from what's still only a battlefield claim. Then we'll look at the risk the market may not be pricing at all. Let's get into it. Start with March 31st, 2026. Iran's Revolutionary Guard, the IRGC, released a warning naming 18 American and Emirati companies. It described them as legitimate targets and told employees and nearby residents across the region to evacuate. The list included Apple, Google, Meta, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Oracle, Palantir, Intel, IBM, Tesla, Boeing, and JP Morgan Chase. Now, I'll stop on that last name for a second. JP Morgan isn't a chip maker, it's a bank, maybe even your bank. When a military force puts banks, software companies, chip designers, and industrial firms on the same target list, it's not describing one industry, it's describing a system. And that warning isn't an internet rumor. The statement was carried by IRGC linked media and reported by major international news organizations. But Iran had already demonstrated that commercial cloud infrastructure could be physically exposed. In early March, Iranian drones directly struck two Amazon Web Services facilities in the United Arab Emirates. A facility in Bahrain was also damaged after a drone strike nearby. Iranian state-linked media later described the attacks on Amazon infrastructure as deliberate. Industry observers called it what appears to be the first confirmed military attack on a major hyperscale cloud provider, and the damage was real. This wasn't a normal software outage. AWS waived all usage-related charges in its UAE region for the month of March, advised the customers to move critical workloads elsewhere, and said full restoration could take several months. The region remains unable to reliably support customer applications. That matters because the cloud sounds weightless. It's not. The cloud is land, concrete, electricity, cooling systems, fiber optic cables, backup generators, and buildings full of servers. Then, on July 21st, the IRGC made a new claim. It said cruise missiles had targeted and destroyed what it called Amazon's central data infrastructure in Bahrain. That claim has not been independently verified. Amazon has confirmed that its Bahrain cloud region was disrupted as a result of the conflict, but neither Amazon nor Bahrain has publicly confirmed the IRGC's claim that a central AWS facility was destroyed. So we're not going to show you a destroyed building and pretend we know what happened. We don't know. What we know is that the claim was made. What we know is that AWS infrastructure in the region had already suffered physical damage earlier in the war. And what we know is that confirmation from Amazon or from Bahrain would change how investors understand the physical risk around cloud infrastructure. Now, zoom out, because data centers are only one side of this story. The other side is water. There are two shipping choke points you need to know. The first is the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow exit from the Persian Gulf. Roughly one-fifth of global oil trade normally passes through it. During this conflict, traffic through the strait has fallen dramatically, so Saudi Arabia and other producers have tried to move more oil by pipeline west toward the Red Sea. And that makes the second choke point even more important. Bab el-Mandeb, the narrow gateway at the southern entrance to the Red Sea. Since Hormuz came under severe pressure, Saudi Arabia has sharply increased exports through its Red Sea port of Yanbu. Shipments briefly reached about 4.7 million barrels per day in mid-July, while loadings have averaged more than 4 million barrels per day since June. Total petroleum traffic through Bab el-Mandeb rose above 7 million barrels per day in June, compared with roughly 4 million before the war. And now that alternative route is under pressure too. On July 20th, Yemen's Iran-aligned Houthi movement announced what it called a naval blockade against Saudi Arabia. The group warned shipping companies that vessels connected to Saudi ports or Saudi cargo could be attacked. Within a day, shipping data showed 2 tankers carrying Saudi crude toward Asia reversing course in the Red Sea. The Xinlongyang had loaded roughly 2 million barrels for China. The Rodos had loaded about 700,000 barrels for India. Both turned back toward the Suez Canal instead of continuing past Yemen. Now, that doesn't prove the Houthis have closed the waterway. It proves that ship operators are already changing routes because they consider the threat serious. And in shipping, behavior matters more than announcements. If vessels reroute, deliveries take longer, fuel costs rise, insurance premiums rise, and the price of moving everything, from oil to fertilizer, starts rising with them. On July 21st, Brent crude traded above $91 a barrel, and Goldman Sachs said Brent could move above 120 if disruptions through Hormuz persist. That's not Goldman's base case. It's a conditional risk scenario. But even $91 isn't only a Middle East story. It becomes a transportation story, a utility bill story, a grocery store story, a corporate margin story, and eventually, your story. Now, connect this with the Korea video we published 3 weeks ago. That video was about financial fragility, a market concentrated around a small group of companies, enormous AI infrastructure spending, and growing amounts of borrowed money. The concern was that a slowdown in spending, weaker orders, or tighter credit could force investors to rewrite the AI story. But this conflict introduces a second category of risk: physical fragility. The data center supporting cloud computing, banking, government services, and the AI investment boom. They're not abstract boxes on a spreadsheet. They're physical facilities connected to electrical grids, water systems, shipping routes, and political alliances. The same buildings that support market expectations on Wall Street can appear on a military map thousands of miles away. Investors have spent years debating whether tech companies will earn enough money from their AI investments. That's still the central financial question. But now there's another one. What happens when the infrastructure itself becomes part of a conflict? And there's one more reason to be careful with every claim coming out of this war. The New York Times reported that the Pentagon had not publicly disclosed dozens of injuries from earlier Iranian strikes against American forces in Jordan. The Pentagon strongly denied intentionally hiding casualty information and said its reporting systems were being updated. That disagreement is exactly the point. Tehran has an incentive to exaggerate the success of its attacks. Washington has an incentive to control information about damage and casualties, and companies may delay public statements while they assess security, legal, and operational risks. So the honest approach isn't to choose the version we like best. It's to label confirmed facts, label unverified claims, and keep watching the evidence. Here's the dashboard. 4 things. First, Amazon and Bahrain. Any confirmation, denial, satellite evidence, service update, or customer report connected to the July 21st claim matters. Until reliable evidence appears, destruction remains an IRGC claim, not an established fact. Second, vessel traffic. Watch actual movement through both Hormuz and Bab el-Mandeb. More diversions, longer delays, or falling transit numbers will tell us more than another military announcement. Third, marine insurance. Insurers don't need to decide who's telling the truth. They calculate the probability of losing a ship or its cargo. When war risk premiums rise sharply, the economic consequences are already moving through the system. And fourth, watch Brent and the AI stocks together. If energy prices keep climbing while AI shares stay resilient, the market is still treating physical infrastructure risk as manageable. If both start moving in the wrong direction at the same time, investors may finally be connecting the two stories. There are still 2 possible paths from here. The off-ramp is diplomacy. Regional mediators have presented a proposal for a 10-day ceasefire. If it holds, shipping improves, oil cools, and the latest attack claim may remain an alarming but contained episode. The escalation path looks very different. The Houthi threat produces more diversions. Another commercial facility is hit, and independently confirmed this time. Energy prices rise. Cloud customers move workloads, and the market is forced to price a question it has never seriously confronted. What is the cloud worth? When the infrastructure behind it is under fire, we separate verified facts from battlefield claims, and when the evidence is incomplete, we say so. That's the whole channel. So tell me below, which risk do you think the market is underpricing more? The physical risk to data centers or the energy shock building around them? Drop your answer in the comments. I read them. If you want the Korea video, the first half of this market risk story, it's on screen right now. And if you want more, no hype breakdowns of financial markets and the global economy, subscribe. Appreciate you watching. I'll catch you in the next one.